In episode 63, we're about to meet Mumm-rana in just a minute, but first of all, the story begins in the Castler's hangar. So in the Feeliner, we have Panthro and Chitara. After the systems were all checked and ready to go, that's when the Feeliner takes off. In the control room, we have Tiger and Lionel that watched it happen on screen. Also in control room was Snarf, and he too sees it on screen. So far, everything went well. Oh, I forgot to mention that also in the Feeliner with Panthro and Chitara were the Thunder Kittens. So long story short, while the Feeliners in outer space, they thought everything was going well, or so they thought until they heard the alarm go off. And the reason why the alarm went off? Well, according to Wiley Kid, she realizes what's going on. It's a red star and it's heading their direction. But that's not all. Inside the red star's control room, we have Vultureman, Slide, the mutants' leader, Jackalman, and Monkey and other mutants that were inside. So in the red star's control room, we have Monkeyman, Jackalman, and Slide, the mutants' leader, inside of it. So after Monkey told Slide and Jackalman that there's a feliner down below, so Slide told Monkey and Jackalman that they can attack it. So that's what they did. Well, back with the feliner, that's when Wily Kid panicked and said, "We gotta do something. The Red Star is gonna collide with us." Well, did something Panthro did. So what did Panthro did? He decided to use the feliner's whiskers, and so that's what he did. So back with the feliner, whose whiskers that just got out thanks to Panthro. So when Panthro told the others to hang on, so what the feliner did is it's spinning around and around. Back with the Rastar, it was about to come closer and closer to the feliner, but instead it gets knocked out thanks to the feliner. So after the Rastar was knocked out thanks to the feliner, luckily for the Thunder Kittens, including Panthro and Chitara, they're fine. So Pedro assures the others that that takes care of the Rastar. Oh, speaking of the Rastar, back with that, it was falling backwards. In the Rastar's control room, that's when Monkey and the other mutants panicked and said, "We gotta get out of here," thanks to the Thundercats who wrecked the Rastar. So all of the mutants evacuated in the escape pods. And so that's what happened. So back with the mutants that were still in the escape pods, that was until when they finally read at Third Earth, or so they did, that's when something grabbed them that took them down. So back with the Thundercats and the Feliner in outer space, they had no idea what was going on, but they knew something weird just happened. The mutants were just there moments ago, but now they're not. But even though Panthro said that there's no way that neither he and the rest of the Thundercats can go in the atmosphere of Third Earth without burning themselves up, so that's when Chitara suggested that the mutants can defend for themselves. But in the meantime, the Thundercats have a job to do in outer space, and so they head off. Back on Third Earth, speaking of the mutants, after they've landed safe back on Third Earth, that's when they saw in front of their eyes a pyramid, but it's a different one. The pyramid that they've seen in front of their eyes is all white, almost similar to Mumm-ra's, but only different. The mutants, however, were in awe. They have never seen a pyramid that is all white before. So, for some unknown reason, they were projected inside the tomb chamber, almost like Mumm-ra's, but a little different. Except for one thing that's different about the tomb chamber, they just projected inside. They have the hieroglyphs on the wall that's different. The statues that were different, instead of the evil statues, there were good ones. And there's the cauldron on the floor. But that's not all. There's when they saw a different kind of sarcophagus. Instead of the sarcophagus being against the wall, just like Mumm-ra's did, that one that they seen is on the floor. So even though the mutants had no idea what was going on, but what they saw next was unbelievable. A figure that just emerged from the sarcophagus on the floor. Her name is Mumm-rana in her mummified form, but instead of the red cloak she's wearing a blue one. The first thing Mumm-rana did was to welcome them all and thinks that they're the good guys. Jackalman was confused and asked a question. "You mean us?" "Who are you?" Slythe asked. Well, Mumm-rana was not only happy to introduce herself, but in her mummified form, she's known as the Ever Merciful. Then she asked the question, "Do I get thanks for rescuing you?" Well, Slythe, the mutants' leader, has his turn to plead a case to say that he and his group of mutants are from the planet Plondor. Originally, anyway. So after hearing about Mumm-rana's confession that she had saved their lives, so Slythe has his turn to plead a case to her that he and his mutants don't need to thank her. So by surprise, what Mumm-rana did was to tell them that they are in fact not the good guys at all. So she knew right away and without hesitation that they're the bad guys. So, in a fit of rage, that's when Mumm-rana told the mutants, "Then I guess that I don't need you." So, she does what any good guy would do. She transforms herself, with the help from the ancient spirits of goodness, of course. Oh, by the way, Mumm-rana's transformation is a lot different than Mumm-ra's. So, from her mummified gentle form, she went into her ever good transformation. So, instead of having snakes on her head, she has a dove on her head. So after Mumm-rana had finished her transformation, she told the mutants to leave. So she uses her powers. Then, long story short, Slicing's impressive says, "Gee, she has powers a lot different than Mumm-ra's." Monkey and has his turn to agree with him. But then a laughter comes out from out of nowhere, and we know whose it is. None other than Mumm-ra himself. By surprise, Mumm-ra had appeared in the exact same tomb chamber as the mutants did. So even though we didn't see it, but it is confirmed that Mumm-ra had transformed into his monstrous form. So Sly, the leader of the mutants, just told Jackerman and Monkey to wait here while he goes to investigate. So that's what he did. Back with Mumm-ra, he congratulated on a job well done to Mumm-rana. Now Mumm-rana, who's really confused, asked the question, "You've heard of me?" "Well, not only that I did," Mumm-ra said, "but I know everything," he said. So Sly, the leader of the mutants, just told Mumm-ra she's really good. He's not kidding. Then he told Mumm-ra that he has an idea. He says, "What if we can use her or something?" he suggested. Well, Mumm-ra not only agrees with Sly's suggestion, but he said he has to transform her first, he suggested. So back with Mumm-ra, now that he and Mumm-ra had officially met, he made a suggestion with her. He says, "Listen, maybe we can work together," he said. Mumm-ra has her turn to plead her case to not only refuse to work with Mumm-ra, but says that she doesn't know him. That made Mumm-ra upset and tries to convince her or persuade her otherwise. So when Mumm-ra has his turn to plead a case to convince her otherwise, again Mumm-ra pleads her case to refuse the second time. So Mumm-ra attacks first, but then Mumm-ra pleads her case to say she'll never surrender to him, so she attacked back. So both good guy Mumm-ra and bad guy Mumm-ra continue to battle with their magic powers on and on and on and on and on. But unfortunately, things don't look good for Mumm-ra because his power, Mumm-ra's that is, became too much for her. So unfortunately, she's turned into a bad guy, just like he did. Mumm-ra, that is. So Mumm-ra told Mumm-rana that you must do what I tell you to do. And so Mumm-rana obliges. Well, hopefully she won't stay as a bad guy for long, but we'll get back to that later. Then what Mumm-ra did next is what any bad guy would do. He convinces Mumm-rana to join him in his cause in making the Thundercats her enemies instead of her friends, and of course the mutants her friends instead of her enemies. So after that, everyone left the White Pyramid. So now that they have arrived at Castler, oh, by the way, Mumm-ra's first step of the plan had worked already, but the Thundercats that were in the control room at the moment had no idea. So now it's time for step two of the plan by Mumm-ra, of course. So meanwhile, in the Castellar's control room, Tiger was telling Lionel that there's someone outside, or should we say, two someones, Mumm-ra and now his partner, Mumm-rana. Also in the control room was Snarf. So, outside the cat's lair, Mumm-rana decided to attack the cat's lair. Inside the control room, after the attack, Lionel and Tiger and Snarf had no idea what was going on. Long story short, Tiger and Lionel just went upstairs to the laser room. And after they got the lasers ready, they attacked the bad guys. But unfortunately, the lasers didn't work, and Mumm-rana decided to use her power that knocks the Castellar's head almost off anyway. So, bad news for Lionel and Tiger, they were hanging on. So, long story short, Mumm-ra uses her powers again, but this time on Lionel and Tigra. Well, luckily for Lionel, he has a plan. He uses his claw shield as a grappling line. Also, good news for Tigra, he uses his bolo whip. As the both of them were about to climb up, Mumm-ra was about to attack them again, but good news for Tigra and Lionel, they actually made it inside of the lair. Well, back with Snarf, luckily he's still in the control room. Well, back with Lionel, now that he's inside of the lair, he got his sword from the sword chamber. Well, despite a minor setback, good news for Lionel, he got his sword. Then later he joins up with Tigra. So after Lionel and Tigra had left from the lair, next to come out of there was Snarf. He just left the control room. Now that everyone is out of the lair, we're talking about Tigra, Lionel, and Snarf. And when they met up with the bad guys, things don't look so good for Lionel. But before that could happen, Lionel decided to use his sword power on Mumm-rana, but Mumm-rana, who was possessed at the moment, repels it back. Watching it happen was Sly, the mutant's leader, Monkey, and Jackalman. And he just pleaded a case that this time they're gonna win, the bad guys, that is. Well, back with Lionel and Mumm-rana, who was possessed at the moment, they continued the battle on and on. But then as I said, things don't look so good when he was disarmed. And then what Mumm-rana did next, after Lionel was disarmed, she cocoons the Sword of Omens. Well, Snarf, who saw what had happened, he was horrified. He said, "Oh dear, now we're done for." But that's not all, Mumm-ra said, because he just told the Thundercats they're going to be sent somewhere where they'll never bother him ever again. Well, him and the mutants. So what did Mumm-ra do? What he did was that he uses his power to make the mutants disappear from the bushes and to appear behind Tigra, Lido, and Snarf, where they are shackled and chained. Things look pretty grim. And what's even more worse is that according to Mumm-ra, he just told Mumm-rana that at last the Sword of Omens is theirs. Unless someone does something about it, this could mean bad news. Well, back with Lionel, who was chained up at the moment, he runs up to get his sword back, but something didn't let him. Well, Mumm-ra pleaded his case to Lionel to mock him by saying, "Your efforts are very futile." If things couldn't get any more worse, guess what Mumm-ra did next? He told Mumm-ra to send Tigra, Snarf, and Lionel into exile, so that's what she did. So back with Lionel, Tiger, and Snarf. They heard Mumm-rana's voice coming out of nowhere. She says, "Pay attention! You are in exile. You are doomed to wander for all eternity. Things look pretty bad." Well, meanwhile in outer space and back with the feliner, well, Panthro is the one who's flying the feliner. He senses that something was off. He said he found it weird that Kessler, for some unknown reason, is not responding. Now, Wily Cat, who agrees with Panthro, he too senses that something was off. "I guess we better head back," Jitar suggested, and so the feliner heads to Third Earth. So meanwhile, back on Third Earth and at the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber, Mumm-ra just told Mumm-rana, who's possessed at the moment. He says, "It's true, we may leave our pyramids, but there's a problem. We can only have a certain amount of time. So we might as well head back to our sarcophaguses," he suggested. So she heads off to her white pyramid to rest in her sarcophagus, while Mumm-ra meanwhile heads back in his to rest up. So that's what they both did. So back with Tigra, Lionel, and Snarf, they're still in exile thanks to Mumm-rana, who's possessed. So Snarf says, "We gotta get out of here." "Where are we gonna go?" Lionel says. "The closest ones we'll get to is Castle Plunder," he said. Then Lionel says that there's a bigger problem. Even if they make it there, the mutants are not gonna welcome them there. And what makes it even worse is that Lionel had lost the Sword of Omens, and he blamed himself for it. So he then hears the spirit of his mentor Jaga to say, "No, you haven't lost it," he said. After Jaga has spoken in his case to say only Lionel can regain it, but there's a problem. According to Lionel, when it's his turn to plead his case, he asked him, "How am I going to pull this one off? Mumm-rana has sealed it." "That's true," Jaga said, "and that's because Jugga just told Tigra, Snarf, and Lionel that earlier Mumm-ra had possessed her. But even so, Jugga says, Mumm-rana's still a good guy, and only you can break that spell from Mumm-ra, he said. And then he also told Lionel one final message. "Don't forget that." And so after that, he left. So Tiger was asking Lionel after Jogger left, "What did he say?" "Well, the way I figure is simply this," Lionel said. "We had to convince Mumm-rana otherwise that we're the good guys," he said. Also, as Lionel says in his case, we had to also convince Mumm-rana otherwise that the mutants in Mumm-ra are the bad guys. Then Lionel also says that once that happens, she could release the Sword of Omens. "I agree," Snor says, "but there's only one problem. How are we going to do that when we're stuck right here?" he said. But then, aha, Lionel said that he has a plan. So he told Tigra to send a message to the mutants. Meanwhile, Lionel and Snarf can help do the rest. And so Tigra agrees. So later at Castle Plandar, it was in the castle's meeting room that Slide, the mutants' leader, was talking to Jackalman and the monkey on which section of Third Earth they wanted to take, and etc. So when Slide, the leader of the mutants, says that he'll take the rest for himself, but Jackalman protested and said, "Wait a minute. What if we could split all the Third Earth equally?" he suggested. But then Slide, the mutant's leader, had to silence Jocko-Man because he said he thought he had heard something, or so he thought. That's because he had no idea that back with Tigra, he had made himself invisible, and he decided to deliver the message to the mutants himself. So after the message was delivered, Slide, the leader's mutant, just told the mutants what the letter said. "It is from Mumm-ra, or so he thought, that said, quote, 'The milk of the tablet will remain the mutants the next day at Unicorn Forest.' But wait, there's more. It also said, quote, 'to summon Mumm-rana to join up with the mutants for an attack.' But unfortunately, the mutants had no idea that that message was a fake. And why is that? Because Tigra senses that Lionel's plan was working. Yes, you've heard right. It was all part of the Thundercats' plan. So the next morning at Unicorn Forest, everything went as planned for the mutants and Mumm-rana, who saw a tablet as heading in their direction. Or so they thought. So here comes a tablet that's heading towards the mutants in Mumm-rana's direction. So just like the way it's planned, the mutants attacked the tablet. Or so they thought. Now Mumm-rana at first sensed that something was off, but she didn't think much of it. But then by surprise, the mutants were shocked to see that the tablet, by some unknown reason, is fighting back against them. So back with Slade, the mutants' leader, he grabbed a bag, but he had no idea that there was something inside of it, and it's not money. But then When Sly saw someone jumping out of the bag, it snarfed. But wait! By surprise, the mutants should have known that that tablet was Lino in disguise. They should have realized it was all a trick, and yes, you have heard right, it was all part of the plan. The mutants couldn't believe it, and then Mumm-rana appears to plead her case to say the Thundercats are the bad guys, and Mumm-ra and the mutants are the good guys, and etc. But Lionel said, "Wait a minute, we're your friends," he said. So instead of saying a word, that's when Mumm-rana uses her power to cocoon Lionel's hands, just like what she did with the sword. But then by surprise, Lionel broke free. But then he tells Mumm-rana this case. He says, "Don't you get it? Mumm-ra and the mutants tricked you. They're the bad guys. And we're the good guys," he said. As Lionel continues to plead a case to Mumm-rana that Mumm-ra is the bad guy and he tricked you and he manipulated you and you had to break the spell and etc. Well, Mumm-rana tries to break it, but she's confused. Then Sly, the leader of the mutants, has his turn to plead a case to Mumm-rana to not listen to Lino. But then by surprise, that's when Mumm-rana knew right away that Lino was telling the truth and then told the mutants that they had lied to her. And remember I said that Mumm-rana won't be under Mumm-ra's spell for long? I wasn't kidding, because what was once snakes on her head now becomes a dove again. So yes, it's true. Mumm-rana is once again a good guy. The mutants were in shock to see that yes, it's true, Mumm-ra's spell had been broken and Mumm-ra is now a good guy again. So Sly told the mutants to grab her, but before they could do anything about it, Mumm-rana turned against the mutants by using her power. Well, thanks to Mumm-rana's powers, the mutants are levitated. And then she tells Lionel that since they're the ones who tricked me, now it's up to me to free your sword. And so, what Mumm-rana did is that she transported Lionel there, at the front of Cat's lair, of course. But then, back with Snarf, he told Mumm-rana, "Hey, don't forget about me." So she transported Snarf there too, just like what she did with Lionel. Oh, let's not forget about Tiger, who just left the castle moments ago. He's headed there. So, meanwhile, at Cat's Lair, what Mumm-rana did is that she had granted the powers of the spirits of goodness to release the Sword of Omens, just like she did before. And by surprise, good news, the Sword of Omens is free and it went back to Lino. But then suddenly, the good guys just heard a voice of Mumm-ra saying, "You broke my spell! You dare to defy me?" Well, you can tell that Mumm-ra was very upset. So Lionel knows what to do. He does what any good guy would do, project the Thundercat signal from his sword. And that's what he did. So back with the Feline in outer space, the four Thundercats who saw the signal, they're now on their way. But can they get there in time? Well, back with Lionel, Mumm-rana, Snarf, and of course Mumm-ra, oh, and speaking of him, he stepped forward to challenge Mumm-rana to a fight, magically speaking, of course. So he says, "Well, let's just say how powerful you really are." So Mumm-ra made a move first on Mumm-rana. But before Mumm-rana went next to attack, that's when Lionel decided to help her, but she wouldn't allow it. She says, "Forget it, this is between me and him." And she's not wrong, so she attacked next. Long story short, when Mumm-ra decided to use his power next against Mumm-rana, and then Lionel got in the way, he pleaded his case to say the good would never overthrow me, and there's nothing that could be done about it. But on the contrary, guess who decided to come to both Lionel and Mumm-rana's rescue? It's the feliner that comes from out of nowhere. So what the feliner did is that it's showing Mumm-ra its own reflection. "Show him the reflection," Lionel said, and the Thundercats agreed, and so the feliner did just that. Mumm-ra's plan almost worked until it backfired because of his own reflection that defeated him. But wait, that's not all. Mumm-rana is running out of power. She just changed back to her mummified form. After Snarf told Lionel the bad news, we gotta get her back to her pyramid right away, he suggested. Oh, remember Tigra who had just left the castle moments ago? After he ran to the cat's lair, he found out what happened from Snarf. So that's when Tigra said that there's a plan. We'll board a feliner, he suggested, and so that's what everyone did. So meanwhile, now that everyone in the feliner had arrived at the White Pyramid, it's now up to Lionel to put Mumm-rana back in the sarcophagus that's on the floor. Now that's the same White Pyramid that the mutants had just left from. So Lionel did it, and not a moment too soon. As soon as Mumm-rana is recharged, the first thing she did was to thank Lionel for everything that he did. Well, him and his friends for saving her life. And before the Thundercats can leave, that's when Lionel was told by Mumm-ra, if there's anything that you need of me and my power, all you have to do is summon me. Lionel not only agrees, but says, I'll remember that. Not only did Mumm-rana agree, but she says, we'll all work together to defeat evil. And that's something that Lionel can agree with. Plus, what's even more better is that Mumm-rana became the next friend on the Thundercats friends list. So after the Thundercats left the White Pyramid, it's now up to the Thundercats to repair the head of the cat's lair that's been ripped off. So, with a little help from Tigra in the feliner, the cat's lair's head is now back on again. It's good for the Thundercats to have their home back. But when they looked over to see what the Thunderkittens are doing, Wily Cat is trying to hypnotize Wily Kit by putting her to sleep. When Snarf went to see what was going on, but instead of Wily Cat putting his sister to sleep, Snarf was put to sleep instead. But Lionel does what anyone will do. When he snapped his fingers, Snarf was snapped out of the hypnotism, and he had no idea what just happened. Oh, and as for Mumm-rana, don't worry, she'll be back. Now that the Thundercats have a new friend on their friends list, who knows what happens next? So that ends episode 63.